All right, mathematics instruction, literacy strategies for improving. So mathematics is a language. Why is math confusing? There are two types of math, formal, which is school math, and informal, which is street math. Typically, you teach through math through memorization of vocabulary, such as jingles, like the negative b plus or minus 2 square root of 2a. And most mathematical nouns or origins are usually Latin or Greek rather than English. So vocabulary words mean different things in math or more than one word to describe a concept. And then the symbols in math are very difficult to understand and can mean different representations. And then the graphs are just difficult in general. And even second language learners, they have this idea talked about in mathematics as a language as students who are new English learners. When you talk about wholes in numbers, they think of 6 or 8 or 9 and 10. They're not grasping the understanding as a whole number. So the math textbook. The math textbook can be confusing because it can contain numerical and non-numerical words. It does not have traditional left to right readings, and graphs must be understood for the text to make sense. And they sometimes put unrelated pictures in the math textbook. It's important to spend time early on in the year to help students understand the math textbook in order for them to better grasp and comprehend the text. So these are confusing terms that are represented in this book that students have issues with, such as radical, reflection, relationship, and then the different symbols that can be confusing. So reading in the math classroom, it's important to explore how mathematics instruction can be deeper and more stimulating through skill building and reading and writing. So strategic reading in math, to make sure to ask questions or read the math problem out loud and paraphrase the author's words, or talking through context clues to figuring out the meaning of the word, and help students understand unfamiliar terminology when they read, and provide scaffolding experiences such as graphic organizers, etc. Writing in the classroom. All right, we'll turn over to the next person.
So with writing in the classroom, there are two types of intelligence. There's linguistic intelligence and logical intelligence. Linguistic intelligence is the one that most people think of, whether they're skilled at listening, speaking, reading, or writing. However, logical intelligence is primarily rooted in the material world, and that might be what someone might refer to as street math. It's not as emphasized in its importance, and that's unfortunate. The transition in math needs to be to solving real-world problems. That way we are able to convince students that math is relevant and it's important in their lives. Writing gets students to share their ideas with each other, with the whole class, and with the teacher, and gets them comfortable with expressing themselves. Also, writing is a prerequisite for the assessment of learning. Through writing, students can answer questions that they should not answer questions, that do not share their thinking. So for example, an inappropriate question would be something like 2 plus 2. It equals 4, boom, we're done. But do students really understand why 2 plus 2 equals 4? Maybe, maybe not. However, by doing some writing on why does 2 plus 2 equal 4, or why does algebra work, teachers can better assess where students' understanding is and where their skills are lacking. Also, writing allows students to share their ability to process and solve some of the complex questions that they might not be able to store all of the computations in their head on. Writing can help teachers know what to teach next and how. So it can help them plan curriculum by getting the feedback from students about what they know and where their weak points are. And so teachers can then say, wait, do I need to reteach this lesson? Do I need to kind of include some of these additional pieces in my next lesson, or can I just move on simply? Also, writing in the classroom provides a structured guide, so something like sentence starters or a fill in the blank can really help students when they're trying to figure out what modeling means. So in culmination, writing in math helps students think, and it allows students time to wonder and to process their various thoughts and strategies.
All right, chapter 4, they talked about literacy. Improving literacy. So a good way to do that is through graphic representations in the math classrooms. So one of those, something in math is logograms, which is they stand for a whole word but have no sound or symbols in relationship for students to decode. So for example, this could be sum, greater than sign, delta, all those abstract math symbols that we need to explicitly teach, because if students don't learn how to read those, then they have no clue what's going on. There's also technical vocabulary such as a rhombus, hypotenuse, for example, which are very rarely used in everyday conversation. Then there's subtle morphology, which is the use of little words, so prepositions, pronouns, articles, and in technical syntax that often have the meaning obscured. All right, so suggestions to help this out is we could combine the verbal with the visual. We can monitor our use of metaphors and model of idioms. So we just talked about earlier in the video how metaphors are very powerful, but we need to make sure that these metaphors are accessible to all students by the vocabulary that we use. We need to assume positive intent. So that means we need to believe that every question students ask and every answer given, there's a kernel of student struggle to understand that they're making the mathematical meaning there. To help students better visualize the language of mathematics, we need to articulate and enunciate. Be careful using every word. That can be especially powerful with English learners. We need to buy pencils to fulfill basic student need, provide enough time for students to draw. That helps the kinesthetic learning process. In open response questions, we need to help students create the diagram first in order to have something concrete to write about, and then have students use graphic organizers that incorporate words and images that help them understand. For example, the Freyer model is a good example of that. Chapter 5 talked about discourse in the classroom. So the NCTM, Principles and Standards for School Mathematics, they talk about the need for students to make conjectures, experiment with problem-solving strategies, argue about mathematics, and justify their thinking. So this means that discussion and argumentation need to happen to improve conceptual understanding. He defines discourse as a genuine sharing of ideas among participants, including both talking and active listening. Great conversations happen only when genuine discourse becomes the culture of the classroom. So there are three types of discourse, two types of discourse. There's traditional discourse, which is the teacher and several students talk. So this is the typical students that you see raising your hand every day in the class. And then there's also probing, which is when the teacher is the leader and the conversations are between the teacher and individual students, but the questions are more open, which make them more accessible for all students. They stem from the teacher's desire to hear students thinking. In a discourse-rich class, means that students work towards mathematical understanding by sharing ideas with each other and the teacher. Students must learn to question and probe one another, thinking in order to clarify undeveloped ideas. So in creating discourse-friendly classrooms, we need to make sure that our problems are engaging and challenging, ask open-ended questions and stimulate students' thinking, honor diverse ideas from all students, encourage mathematical arguments between students, let students share different problems when they're solving the method, so let them know that there's more than one way to go about it, and probe students when they have difficulty thinking about a concept. Then chapter 6, they talked about the idea of metis. So what metis is, it's a Greek word, and the definition is a tool. It's a toolbox of knowledge and practical skills that enables people to respond to change. So metis cannot be taught or memorized. It can only be imparted and acquired. So an example of metis is the difference between knowing everything about developing pedagogy, but only a metis-rich teacher would be able to guide the students as they struggle to understand the complex text. So metis is something that you gain over time and experience, and it's important that teachers can show a strong metis. So example of metis would be skillful arithmetic students who can act as a human calculator, but only metis-rich mathematical students will have a feel for the connections of the underlying concepts. So the metis is the part of them knowing when and where to use the math instead of just being able to calculate it. Metis-rich environments help people converse rather than lecture, and people who are metis-rich know how to react when the unexpected occurs. And for a deep understanding, students with deep understanding of math will be able to write clearly about mathematics in words and symbols. They'll be able to provide graphic representations and articulately justify strategies and how their solutions connect to that of their classmates.